We'll now proceed to the Silver Lake Regional School Committee meeting. Let me open with a roll call vote. Jean?
Here.
Jason? I'm sorry. Karen? Okay, let's wait a second.
Just to clarify, Union can stay at the table if you'd like, but
Sorry, Karen, are we ready? Okay. All right, we will open the Silver Lake Regional School Committee meeting with a roll call. Jean?
here.
Jason?
Yes.
Michael? Here. Lucas?
Here.
Jen?
Here.
Paula?
Yes.
Mark?
Here.
Amy?
Here.
And present in this. And with that, a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. And if anyone is intending to make an audio or video recording of this meeting, they should notify me at this time. Is there any public participation?
Hi all, my name is Jess Jerome, the president of the SLEA. I just want to say thank you to the school committee for not moving forward with the central office positions at this time. As I stated in my letter earlier, we certainly appreciate the need for these positions, but to hire these positions without ensuring the security of our current staffing to provide services and programs to our students would be detrimental for all. The SLEA looks forward to continuing to work together to push for funding from the state and securing more stable funding in the future. So thank you very much.
Any other public participation? All right, seeing none. Can I get a motion for approval of minutes or discussion of minutes from February 13th?
These are very minor points, but Patty Doyle, I believe, is a sophomore. One of the teachers wants to correct me on that. Yes, he is. And I believe, I'm trying to find it, Jennifer Ehring, I believe her last name is E-R-R-I-N-G. I think just one arm. One arm. One arm.
Okay. Do I have any motions pertaining to the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from February 13th.
As amended.
As amended.
Second. Any further discussion?
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so budget discussion. Sarah, as we go through this, what I would like to try to avoid is reciting each figure that's on each slide and really focus on the content of the slides and give committee members a chance to ask for clarification and make sure that they are able to compare apples to apples. I assume it's going to be Sarah.
Updating, I have one more slide to update after the one I'm updating right now. So if you could give me.
Let me know when you're done.
No, that slide.
No, I have to refresh it.
Really? Cool.
Just let me know when you're ready and I can do that.
Do you want to take 10 minutes? Do you want to do a brief?
I don't think I need 10 minutes,
Okay.
but I just have one more slide to update the total cost of education. I thought you might like it, based on what's just happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a member of this committee, this particular meeting was supposed to take place based on us having information on our E&D certification. And that information, from what I understand, came in yesterday or today, and the meeting was put back on. I'm also, as the chairman of the SAFER committee, concerned that we have yet to discuss magnitude and scope of our capital plan. And we have, as of Friday, we received our facilities comprehensive review, so we can actually start getting into the capital plan, and come up with building maintenance that we need to do in the 4 buildings here on campus. So, going forward, it's going to be difficult to make decisions based on a budget, getting these numbers at the last minute. I understand there's deadlines and other people involved, but in the sake of trying to get our towns numbers so they can make decisions on overrides, I'm willing to go forward. But I want you to understand that as a committee member, I'm very limited by the information that I'm getting at the last minute to make reasonable, sound, good decisions for the benefit of Silver Lake. And I think I'm speaking for my other fellow committee members that we need to really try
So, Mark,
to get this material.
let me just stop you. I'll take responsibility for today. I think since you made that point earlier in the year, the administration has generally had almost everything posted within 48 hours. In this case, I did not want to go forward with the meeting if we did not have a firm E&D number, because it's pretty critical to how we assess the rest of the year. I'm traveling on business all next week. If we postponed this meeting, then this meeting was going to be run without me, and I wanted to have management of the meeting and my input into it, things like that, particularly because of how much I've gone over this. The Department of Revenue certified the number this morning. I did check to see if we could possibly have the meeting on a Thursday. Didn't work for the administration, so it was pretty much this or not being available next week. I think in general, the administration's been pretty responsive about trying to have all of the information in place a couple of days ahead of time. And in this case, it's not their fault, it's my fault.
And I support the decision, Mr. Chairman, to have the meeting this evening and move it forward for the reasons I stated. The towns need these numbers. But we sent our E&D off on the 31st of December to get certified. And I don't know if that was particularly the best time to send it, if it could have been sent sooner, but highlighted, as well as our facilities review study that waited 2 weeks before we actually asked our contractor to move forward when this committee voted. Thank you.
Okay. Sarah, you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this brief presentation, there is a $426,557 change to the Silver Lake budget since we last met on February 13th. There were 2 students with changes in placements that require an increase of $140,491 to the tuition line. There were 2 move-ins that require an increase of $233,000 to the tuition line. We received information from our transportation vendor that they're increasing their costs by 10% for next year, and that required an increase of $313,794 to the special ed transportation line. We also did receive information from Representative Lenatra that there is an additional $260,728 in estimated potential emergency assistance shelter funds. We had already allocated the first payment of shelter funds towards the offset of the Silver Lake budget on February 13th. This is an additional, again, estimated potential that the school committee chair asked me to put towards the Silver Lake budget. All that being said, the 2% increase on the FY25 budget, which was what was asked for, would be $40,564,440. The level service budget as adjusted tonight after the changes to the shared costs is $42,246,664. After deducting anticipated grants and revolving totaling $3,446,728, there's a difference of $1,235,496 to be addressed. The next.
Just point of clarification, The number, $1,235,496 to be addressed would get us to the 2% increase that school committee had asked the administration to devise, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Sarah, to be clear as well, we had Christine propose different scenarios for special education with the idea that succeeding at that may mitigate some out-of-district costs and possibly also turn positive to us if we attracted students from other districts. I think that there was a proposed cost for to do so at the high school at about $320,000. Is that number included in this number or not?
That number is not included in this one.
Okay.
The next slide is just a repeat from the February 13th slideshow. This was the possible revenues that were discussed with the SAFER committee. So on the next slide is the operating assessments. So these are what the operating assessments would be to Halifax, Kingston, and Plimpton: a 6.3% increase to Halifax, a 3.8% increase to Kingston, and a 1.1% increase to Halifax, Kingston, 1.1% to Plimpton. On the next slide, there's no change to this slide. The exempt capital, there's no change. There won't be any change. This is our debt. So this slide is the exact same as the previous presentation. The total assessments, which is the operating assessment plus the exempt capital, has an increase to Halifax of 5.5%, an increase to Kingston of 3.2%, and an increase to Plimpton of 0.4%. On the next slide, these are the town operating budgets. This is what Halifax and Kingston voted in the light tan. The yellow is the Plimpton current operating budget with the adjustments they made last night, which is not yet voted. And so with these numbers, the total cost of education for each town: for Halifax, it would be an 11.3% increase, Kingston a 5% increase, Plimpton a 7.3% increase, for a total overall 7.1% increase.
Okay. Jean, did you have your hand up earlier and I missed you?
I did. Do we have the total that E&D certified at? Is it 2.2 million?
We do have the total. Let Sarah get it.
I'm trying to
Jason,
pull
you
it
want?
up right now, sorry. I printed out a lot of things and they're sitting on my desk right now.
So my question also relates to E&D. As I was hoping, we do have more than the 5% allowable by statute. I was wondering if the assessments you're showing us for Silver Lake right now already accounted for the mandated $79,487.40 we must use to offset?
They do not.
Okay, great. That's great news. Okay.
The certified E&D number is $2,143,704. As Jason noted, by statute, we cannot have more than 5% of our budget be in E&D. So we have to reduce the E&D amount and distribute back to the towns in excess of $79,487.40.
Point of clarification, Mr.
Sure.
Chair. Does not have to be returned to the towns, it is to be used to offset the assessment for this coming fiscal 26.
Okay, my
Just want to make
apologies.
sure people know
Yep.
we're going to apply it to the numbers you're seeing up there. It's not just going to go back to the towns.
Okay. So that number, without us voting, so to speak, would automatically cut into the 1.2 million that is the present budget gap that we're discussing how to deal with. Okay? So I have a number of things on my mind related to different things that I'd like to get clarity on. I have heard various concerns from different people saying, is it sustainable to dip into E&D? Are we, putting off something that is inevitable? That is a fair concern. It's not a great plan to go to E&D on the one hand. On the other hand, generally speaking, for about 10 years running, we have been able to administer $500,000 to $1 million from our E&D to inject into a capital plan. And so we've been very judicious with that E&D. Our thinking is that we don't suppose that E&D would suddenly go to zero. That we would still have something, sort of coming in, if you will. Would it be as large as what we're presently seeing? I don't think anybody here wants to plan on that. Some of what we have our eyes on are that debt related to the construction of these buildings and of the creation of the district as it is constituted would come off in the next 2 years. There are sort of 2 big debt payments left, one I think this May and one the next May, unless I'm getting that wrong. Maybe, am I right about that, Sarah? Is it this May and next May, or is it the
It's
following 2 Mays?
this May, and then next May is the last payment for the middle school. And then the following May would be just the high school, $750,
So-
approximately $1,000.
So 2 years out, you have a complete retirement of debt. Some of what we have to consider about that and what the towns will have to consider about that is that we have invested a lot into the envelope, meaning the school buildings. We've done a lot each year to keep up with them and that sort of thing. But we have had a contractor prepare additional estimates of things that kind of could be done, should be done, must be done. And the costs on that are pretty significant and would range, Mark, what would you say, between 4 and...
But we had the scope of expense just for the high school, middle school, without our sewer plant and admin building maintenance in the 50 million range. And I'm throwing that number out just to give you the scope. And the debt that we have currently, I would think, would be prudently invested in your capital plan to keep the buildings you have so you don't end up replacing them as we had to do 20 years ago.
Okay.
A substantial amount, but I understand it will be a godsend to have that debt not going forward.
So those are scenarios. We have scenarios that are as low as 4 million and as high as 50 million. There's no scenario there that from a school committee perspective, would we attempt to take on through operational funding. Each of those scenarios are something that, to our way of thinking, would require bonds and town votes and things like that. So we are looking at that sort of time horizon and keeping that in mind as far as how E&D goes, that sort of thing. So
A little bit of good news also, Mr. Chairman.
yes, sir.
That we are going to be due, and nobody has any idea of the scope, but some rebates on the air conditioning project at the middle school. So we can't spend that money because as the political situation is in flux, we may not see the scope of those rebates. But at this point, it's good news. I spoke to comprehensive facilities review gentleman today, and he is focused right now trying to get us a firmer number, and will share that with us as soon as he can come up with that.
Okay. So one of the things that, if you were following last time, I had asked Dr. Panarese to prepare proposals related to special education, and we had looked at the idea of having about a $320,000 investment to set up services that would potentially keep, I think we have, is it 8 or 9 high school out of district placements? What's that?
We have most of our out-of-district placements at high school.
Okay, so with the idea of trying to reduce that number, just a reminder, those out-of-district placements, which are, one of the hugest challenges related to our budget, run at more than $100,000 apiece. And so the idea of trying to keep as many as possible in our district is both an advantage to the student when they can be with people that they are growing up with, and an advantage to us in terms of our budget management. So right now, none of that, neither the cost nor possible savings are factored into any budget. Jason?
Mr. Chair, can I just suggest that we try and get to that 2% number, or even perhaps as far below it as possible, and then consider
Yep,
potentially any
absolutely.
aspects, including the SRO?
Yep.
That we had discussed as well.
Absolutely. So I just kind of wanted to set the table of the different things that were in play and to help people understand, yes, we are looking at the long term. Yes, we're conscious of the fact that salaries go up and things like that. We have our eyes on a lot of different factors. So all that said, that's the playing field. And with that, committee members, we have a $1.2 million gap we've got to deal with if we want to get to that 2%, or as Jason suggested, even below that. Paula?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? The estimated potential emergency assistant funding there, the 260 some odd thousand, it's up there, I guess we're baking it in. Are we really that comfortable we're going to see that, to bake that in?
Jean?
I did attend the meeting last week with our state representative as well as our state senator, and they did clarify that those numbers are anticipated for both Silver Lake as well as $550,000 to Kingston, and that would be checks in May and August. And from what my chair for Kingston was told by our town administrator, is they are allowing us to use those figures for our FY26 budget. I'm not saying that it's a smart idea, but
Keith Hickey very strongly suggested that we add that
Okay.
into the budget. Jason?
So, starting with the $1,235,496, can we just take off the top right now, so we have a clear number of the $79,487.40?
I've actually already done that.
Okay.
I've got $1,156,009.
Could you,
Rounded.
I'm sorry,
without
what's
the
the 79,000?
$79,000 is the money we're mandated to return to offset the assessment because we're over the 5%.
Yep, thank you.
And that was, just to clarify, that was $79,487
Yes.
is the number that we had.
Yes.
So I just subtracted that from
And
the...
40 cents.
And 40 cents, okay, so that would be $1,156,000 and $8.60 rather than
Let's stay in
$9.
whole dollars.
Okay, so $9.
So, one of the proposals we had last time we were together was to consider increasing fees.
Yep.
There was some discussion amongst ourselves between 90,000 and potentially 100,000, that the subcommittee came up with a recommendation of 90.
Where's that?
I'd like to go back to discuss those fees at this point to see
Yep.
how much we can offset the revenues back.
Sarah, could we pop back to the slide on the fees? There we go. So I think what people have been reluctant about was the $100 per student who participate in clubs, because some of the clubs have a staff stipend and some did not. And I think there was discussion about, would we charge everybody who is in a club in order to pay staff stipends for the clubs that require that? Would we charge just we kind of thought it seemed unfair to charge just the kids who are in the clubs with the staff stipend attached, just charge them but not the others. that sort of thing. And so I think the difference between the 100,000 and the 90,000 is that $10,000 at the top.
So I make a motion to accept the $90,000 as presented by the subcommittee's recommendation.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Friendly
Okay.
amendment, I think it's 87,000, around 87,000.
Okay,
These are all estimates.
all right, so we have a,
Second proves with the change in numbers, and let you know that these are estimated numbers going
Yep.
forward based on participation in these activities, so.
yeah. And remind me, I think we said in subcommittee, what would we do in the case of students who had an inability to pay?
The contract administration.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well, the same protocol we do now.
okay, all right,
And that,
also
those
available.
estimates, especially the athletic department, take that into consideration, the percentage requested in the
okay. All right,
Yeah,
Or
and
is
let
there-
it be noted too that there's still a cap.
yes,
Yes.
yes. So in other words, we're not going to roll up to a single family $3,000 of fees or something like that because they happen to play 3 sports and do 3 clubs. So, any further discussion of adding the fees in? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay,
That's what the 90.
what does that bring our number to?
Am I using 87,000 or 90,000?
87,000.
You should be the treasurer.
Okay. 1,609, hold on. $1,069,009.
So 1.07 thereabouts. Okay,
The next one is something that I'm not necessarily in favor of, but I think we're obligated to look at, like the budgetary situation. We are replacing 2 teachers who are retiring. We do have savings there by hiring lower on the pay scale with less education. However, I think we're obliged to look at those positions and whether or not we absolutely need to fill those or not, to maintain the structural integrity of our educational programs in our schools.
okay. So I think I'd be looking for a comment from administration in reference to that.
Unfilled, they're not retirements. Well, I don't have any,
Yeah, if there's any left,
so I have one new retirement.
I'm going to.
Is it an official retirement? This one.
That's official.
Yep. Yes, that's all I have. I don't have anything else.
Correct.
I just have proofs.
Yeah, there's one official retirement that I've received confirmation from the employee and that we've acknowledged.
Okay. So in the budget presentation on February 13th, I saw a cost savings of $120,000 or so for 2 retirements.
It was a retirement and there was a
And a
resignation.
Okay.
Spanish.
And at first, I thought we were saving that much money because we weren't replacing them. I was thrilled to find out we were saving that money and replacing them. I wanted to know what kind of operational hit would it be to our educational program not to replace those? And what cost savings would there be? And I'm not saying I'm in favor of this, but we're obliged to investigate this.
So when we met with the principals, we discussed cuts and what would have the greatest impact on student programming and impact to student learning. And at that time, we presented to you some proposed positions that the principals concurred would have the least amount of impact of all possible negative things. There will be an impact if this position is not filled, and I just want the committee to know that there was a process involved where we sit down multiple times to debate and discuss the potential impact to students and their programming. So while we recognize that there are benefits to laying off someone who's retiring because then you don't have to pay unemployment, there are in fact more programmatic or student impacts that would result.
And I think when we originally were having those conversations, we were looking at the potential for multiple staff cuts. And so when we're looking at the wide range of cuts across multiple departments, it is easy to say, well, if you anticipate this retirement, that's one of the cuts, right? But when you're having to make a decision about one or two cuts, it's not as easy to make that decision for recognize. And so in this particular case, it would certainly impact class size, certainly limit our program offerings within that department. It could be devastating costs.
I appreciate that
Yeah,
clarity.
that's a great question, yeah.
I have some more.
Good.
Okay. So I know that we have placeholders in for homeless transportation and McKinney-Vento. I just wanted to compare the placeholders to the expenditures from this fiscal year.
I'm sorry, I was side-typing.
It's okay. Similar question to last night. I wanted to compare our McKinney-Vento and our homeless transportation lines proposed for FY26 versus the actuals for FY25, please.
Yes. It's on my utility spreadsheet.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Sarah, while you're finding that, can I just point out that our state rep did let us know that some of the sheltered students will be gone by August, the end of August, or anticipated to be gone by, but there is a possibility that through McKinney-Vento that we are still going to be responsible for some of those students, so I would caution against decreasing that amount until we know what we are responsible for.
But I think if we're paying a certain amount for a certain volume of students, and we have a budget that is up here for that, and then we believe that there would be no more than certain volume of students and likely less based on that knowledge, I don't think that we would continue to include this amount in the budget. I think that's what Jason's point is. So I think,
Well, even further,
Yep.
okay? Depending on what Sarah comes back at us with for numbers and actuals versus expected.
So,
Let's say we would do lowball, we could always backfill the D&D funds
yeah,
when we actually incur them, instead of putting them into the budget and having a higher number right now.
right.
so last year's homeless transportation at the middle school, it was the expenditure's $48,954.15. Do you want me to go back? I have 3 years in front of me.
No, 1 year is fine for me.
The high school transportation homeless was $138,807.04, and that was what was paid out of the operating budget. There was also a transportation grant that we received, and that was about another $50,000 in homeless transportation.
But the state isn't fully funding it as they've alluded to in several past budget cycles, right? Where the expenses that we're incurring locally are far in excess of what the governor and the legislature put in their budgets. So with those numbers,
That's where
that's where we are with the estimates for this year as well.
yes.
Okay. All right, so those were the low hanging fruit for me. And that got us to $1,070,000 or so that we need to deal with to get to 2%. If anybody else has any other ideas before I throw out my big one.
Like, ask a program question?
Sure, go ahead.
So, Michaela, I wasn't sure if this present level of discussion included or did not include the schedule change you had originally proposed?
This does not include a schedule change.
So that,
As if we had to kind of pause that when we were anticipating.
at one point you had indicated our budget discussions precluded you from continuing. Are we at that point with it now that we could not?
Want me to keep all my teachers, I can make it happen.
What's that? You can make it happen?
Yeah, keep all my teachers, I can make it happen.
Okay, good to know. Thank you very much.
Got it.
And then, before my colleague, who is well prepared to make a suggestion, conceptually within your plan, if you could include where our capital plan for this year is going to be, because we're not going to be able to secure the revenue sources we had thought. Make that part of your presentation. I appreciate it.
Yep. I'd like to hear if anybody has any other low-hanging fruit that they found.
Going for the big stuff.
Okay, so last year I proposed a radical idea for this school committee. That was my 9th Silver Lake Regional School budget. I had been a steward of this committee for a decade at this point, of the E&D fund, of the capital plan. As the chair alluded to earlier, E&D is not supposed to be used to offset operating expenses because it's often looked at as one-time revenues. We've proven year after year that these are not one-time revenues. Last year, we drew E&D down to less than $400,000. Between using $750,000 for operating and using close to 500 something change for the capital plan, and yet it did replenish this year. And I'm not predicting that we will have a year where we will come back with a $2.1 million certification. I don't think we will be back to that next year. But if all of the work of the superintendents, the school committee members, and the teachers of Massachusetts pushing on the legislature get the House and the Senate to increase their budgets, all of that money is in excess of what we're basing our budget on tonight. All of that will flow directly into E&D. All of it. So we need to keep fighting, we need to keep pushing, so those dollars do come in, even after tonight, because that's what's going to replenish E&D for next year. Because the amount of money I'm going to propose to use tonight is even more than last year, and I think we're probably going to have to wean ourselves from the use of E&D in subsequent years in order not to imply a fiscal cliff for our three communities. So, tonight I'm going to propose that we used $1,250,000 of our certified E&D. Of what's left over of the allowable 5% cap of $2,064,216.60, which would leave in E&D $814,216.60 that would have to account for this year's capital plan and to leave ourselves some sort of cushion for unexpected expenses. And I only make this motion with the understanding and communication with the three town managers that if Silver Lake has a catastrophic physical plant occurrence, that they will need to convene a special town meeting to help us address that issue, because we won't have the means to address it ourselves because of how low we're drawing the E&D tonight. And I did get assurances from all three town managers that they would be willing to do so.
It's got a motion, I think, you made.
Clarification? The $1,250,000, does that include, or is that over and above the required $79,487.40?
Over and above.
Over and above. Thank you.
We're going to get a second on this.
Yep.
Well, did you motion?
I did motion.
You did?
Yep.
I'll second, but then can I
Yep, go ahead.
comment, question? You, question first, and then I'm going to comment. $1,250,000, so we're going below the 2%.
That is correct.
Okay, I'm in favor of that, I'm in support. You indicated you've been on this committee for 9 years. I've sat double that, or close to it at this point. I'm going to be brutally honest here. First of all, I'm all for trying to get us fully funded from any avenue that we deserve, that really should be coming to us. However, I'm very pessimistic. I don't think we can bank on that, especially in the turmoil that we have, in the state and in the country right now. It is a slippery slope. In all the years I've been on this committee, other than last year, we have never touched E&D to fund operating budget. We, as a committee, a number of years ago, whether it was motioned or whether it was just kind of thrown out there, have sort of agreed 300,000, no less than that in E&D. So that's sort of been the floor that we've looked at. So that conceivably leaves about $500,000 this year. And having said that, I'm pessimistic and seeing where some of the E&D monies came from to get us to this number this year, I don't believe we'll be anywhere near 2.2 million or whatever the number is. So I am fully in support of what you have proposed, only because I feel like we're between a rock and a hard place. And these towns cannot handle overrides and don't even want to hear the term override. And for those reasons, I support what you're saying. I think next year may be a very grave repeat of this year, unfortunately, and we'll be even in a more difficult place.
I'm happy to kick the can.
I'm with you,
One more
Jason,
year down the road.
because my feeling was always give the kids what you can for as long as you can.
Yep, and
No
if I
pun
just
intended
kick
with
the
the
can
cans,
year
but
after year on this committee, I'm doing my job. Right, and we've kicked the can together for quite a few years.
yeah, we have.
And I agree, I don't foresee us having $2.1 million in E&D certified next year.
Yeah.
But that's where I really think it's important how much we focus on the capital plan as an entire committee for the next year, and how we start transitioning paying for our capital expenses here from an excess and deficiency fund into bonding things out over time.
I don't
Well,
disagree.
Mark?
Well, a capital plan is though no different than every other part of your operating budget. And because we have decided to prioritize it with what we have in E&D after we get our program budget put together, I don't disagree with that. However, things cost a lot more than they have in the past. The numbers that you have put out, $500,000 today in the cost of things that buying HVAC units, for example, doubled, tripled. So we cannot keep looking at that same number. We have to look at that as a percent. So I think the capital plan should be funded within the operating budget, that we should have those numbers firmed up before we have this discussion next year. And if your plan is to take it out of E&D, we ought to have a pretty good idea what we're going to have in E&D to do that. So I'm reluctant to support thinking of something under $800,000 for your capital plan this year if you're not going to be even further in the hole next year when you come back to do this. That's my reservation with all of your proposals.
So to that, and through you, Mr. Chair, for several years now, I've worked very closely with our state senator and state representative to get earmarks in the state budget that have brought capital dollars to our district, and they've come through. And so far this year, I have not been made aware of what our needs are. We put some money into the arts last year with ADA compliant risers for the middle school and some money for work on the stage here at the high school as well. So if maybe you want to wrap me into some of the items I could potentially get taken care of to take out of the capital plan, I'd be happy to do that for us.
Well, again, we are insufficiently informed yet to go forward with a capital plan, and it's not a big discussion, but we do need to make sure that we have funds available for that in your proposal.
Jane?
I just want to echo what Jason said at our last meeting, which is there's no way that any of us on this committee, I believe, want to make any of these cuts that were proposed to us, knowing that we have a potential revenue source of $2.2 million. Now, it's only $2.1 million, and I think we're all in agreement that this is a Band-Aid again. This is not a fix. This does not correct our budget deficits that we're seeing. And I want to point out that we're seeing all of the district and all of the South Shore. We're not in a unique situation here. I think, I can speak for Kingston that we're very lucky right now with what we're able to offset with the budget deficits, because it's going to help our elementary potentially. And I think for Halifax as well, with Jason's potential 1.25 instead of just the $1 million difference, that's going to help substantially to all three of the elementary budgets and what they're going to be asking or needing from their towns to meet a level service budget. But I just want to repeat, I know that we all know this, but if we kick the can down the road in regards to what services we're providing, then we're just going to pay more for them. And so while we're kicking the can down the road and patching our budget together, we're going to be paying more if we decrease teachers or staff or positions or programs that we can offer to keep Silver Lake where it needs to be with what we can do. So I would support Jason's motion of the 1.250 and just hope that next year E&D does recertify at least a fraction of that, because, you know, it will most likely replenish, and if it doesn't replenish, then that's the state's way, in my opinion, of saying, you've used it too long, now it's going to run out. It'll eventually run out. But if it does replenish, then I think it's there for us to use. So I would support your motion, and I think that the best that we can offer our kids at this point is to fund what was requested of us and hope that the towns can be supportive of.
One question, Ms. Sarah.
Yep.
Part of our E&D replenishment is our revenue sources, and the power purchase agreements that we have is part of that. And when we originally entered that power purchase, it was around $100,000 annually we were getting. That number changed when I came back on the committee. It was around $300,000 projected for last year. Next year, I believe we are looking at $400,000 I've seen now. That was a number that changed even during the slides we've looked at during this process. Sarah, could you give us a little bit more of a number of what our past year was that we saw in a revenue source and what we could expect going forward?
I budgeted $400,000 as a revenue source from the power purchase agreement to offset, as revenue to offset the assessments. So anything over and above that $400,000 that comes in goes into E&D for the next year.
Okay. Do you have the number we had for last year?
I can get that to you tomorrow morning.
It was close to 300 on that.
Paula?
So I'm going to sound like a broken record here. I just want to point out that, once again, talking about kicking the can down the road, we did not add to our accounting staff. And it's hurting us day in and day out with meeting deadlines and having budgets, created and updated and presented to towns. You can only get so much out of a handful of people. The auditors, what is it now, 3 years, 4 years, at least 3 years, they have come to us in writing in the audit report saying we should and we need to update that area with some more staff. So once again, the audit report, when it comes out again, is going to tell us. So at some point, we cannot continue to turn a blind eye. I know we're not talking about adding it this year. It's a very weak spot in our process overall at Silver Lake. And I don't mean that offensively to anybody. I mean, you can only get so much work out of so many people. We need to look at that at some point. I know I'm a squeaky wheel, but we're really hurting ourselves by not staffing that area correctly.
All right, we have a motion on the floor.
And I think I seconded.
You did?
I did.
Yep. Good, so I'd like to take a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Yes, sir.
So my math has that at $180,991 below our goal for 2%. So at this point, I would make a motion to add $80,000 to the budget to fully fund a full-time SRO for the middle school.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Sorry, wait,
So I just need clarification.
Yep.
The operating budget is a number, and the E&D is separate from that and offsets the operating budget in the assessment process.
Right. We just need to play with it our way, but you can do the math your way.
That could be the quote of the night.
It's semantics.
It comes out the same way.
Yeah. So in order for me to play with the math, I need to understand what you're, so you're thinking differently about this. The 87,000 in the additional revenue that gets counted.
Just do it that way. The ad revenue, subtract, guess our, it's difference of $7,000.
The overage by an SRO.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
So that still lands us, after we do all the math, but correctly per the assessment, $100,000 below our target for the 2%. And we finally get our full-time SRO. Thank you, Council.
All right. Do we need to take a vote on a final number then?
That might take a while for us to get the final number and to get the
Okay.
figures correct.
You want to have that final number next week for the meeting?
Yeah.
All
I
right.
would ask Sarah what she needs.
Sarah, do you feel okay about that?
That's our
Jason,
last
if you
chance.
could give me your notes.
I can give you mine, too.
I will watch the meeting
Yes.
over again.
Respectfully, the Kingston Board of Selectmen's meeting is the same night. It's also on March 6th, right? So if we could vote a budget tonight so that Kingston Elementary has the potential to look at additional levy.
Okay, so we need a number then.
That's 100,000 short.
I'm so embarrassed now that I have to show this to you, Sarah.
Below the 2%.
Embarrassed to show my fourth grade teacher this.
Well, let's see how there's no support.
Is this the original number?
Yes, correct.
Then we offset it with the mandated money, the excess of the 5% for me and D to get to this.
Right, but you're offsetting expenditure, like, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around the way you're doing it. Because I look at the operating budget as just being operating,
You would have my vote today.
revolving, whatever grants.
Yep, I know, yep.
So,
Disappointing.
yeah, so this is the number that we need.
Thank you for bringing me up to speed.
What's this number?
I didn't mean to.
I believe that number right there is the less, the
79.
number right
Yep,
there, right?
okay.
And this number was us taking away what, 87,000 right there?
I don't buy it. But this is the priority.
I know I didn't do it actuarial.
This is in the expenditure world. This is in the revenue world.
If I talk that language to my school committee member and they will
Yep.
We all probably move.
So the minus 87,000 goes
I don't have any authority to make Well, it did require an email to actually collect them.
Let me explain the numbers that I did to see if this makes sense to you. And then we have to go back and do the 80,000. So this 4564,440 is the 2%.
Right.
This number here is the total of these two, which is circuit breaker, this is grants and revolve.
Right, which I didn't touch at all because I just used your numbers.
Well, I put the 87,000 in here. So if we're gonna do, because that's where it belongs.
Okay.
Because,
Yep, absolutely.
so this number, 2% plus this, gives us this as the total budget.
Okay.
But what you're saying is we're going to take, talk to me about the 80,000 for me. So I believe we have to increase this by $80,000 and then take it out in here.
Okay. That makes sense to me. That all squares. No.
Yes.
No, it's 100 under the 2%.
You're getting 100 under the 2%
I won't say that. I understand what you're saying. And I understand what Sarah's saying. And I see why you would be eating there. You have to spend it. You would take
Right. So I believe that adding the 80%, the 80,000 here gives us the authority to spend that money. So I think that has to get added here. Okay. Can I borrow your graphic
Yeah, it's
calculator?
better and I'm embarrassed about that.
Oh my God, your battery's down.
And I have the cord on the computer.
I have mine in my office. So that, it's the budget number at a specific time that we would get together before meetings. And that goes away unless something else lose. I did those times.
When you approach the meeting, you are the same.
Yeah.
So when the regular
This number here will go into the assessment and get all of the E&D technology. Okay? So you want this number, this number.
Yeah, because I'm expecting it. Salt Lake Regional School.
A new E&D number would have been pretty
I'm expecting the final model line number to be 100,000 less than what it was originally.
Right, for statutory, the way the assessment works. E&D has to come out of the assessment.
Yes, absolutely.
So some of it, like this number here, has to go to the assessment. So
And we go towards operating on.
in the long run, what you said is correct.
Yep.
But it has to go
That language
too.
and make it come out with what we just agreed. Absolutely. Let's take care of it. Okay, I'm sorry.
Anything's wrong,
Well, we can always.
fix it next week.
Some reconciling.
Take 100 and you refresh.
Yeah, these numbers are different than what we have. So it was like, and my vision sundowns. So I'm like, what does it say?
So when we find out, we get any of these numbers involved.
He's not going to be here Thursday, just FYI.
Thursday's right. So we're going to go over that and not make that an agenda item. Yes. You guys want that possibly? Overworked to clarify.
Oh, yeah.
But at this point,
So we're here.
Explain to everybody so you'll know.
Okay, let's come back to order.
So if you take a look at the language for the motion, the $40,644,440 at the top is the 2% budget plus the school resource officer. The middle number, the $3,533,000 is comprised of the $2.5 million estimated circuit breaker, and the $1,033,000 is the 240 grant, the Emergency Assistance Shelter Fund and the $87,000 anticipated revenue from fees. Thank you. That gives a total final expenditures for $44,177,440. The first number on that slide, the $40,644,440, will then go into the assessment formula. And in the assessment formula, there will be $1,329,487.40 put in as revenue from E&D, which will offset the $80,000 that was added to the 2%.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
sorry, it's at the wrong time. I was asked to bring it to the attention of the committee if we considered any of the special education program with these numbers. And
I can't hear you.
I was asked if we had included any of the special education programming with these numbers.
No. So, Sarah, are you asking us to vote these numbers, but the assessment numbers are what are going to be updated for the towns based on what the E&D vote was?
Yes, and I can do that now if you want to wait another 10 minutes.
Okay?
We don't motion the assessments, do we? Just the,
If we could have them when they're available, I
Yeah.
think that would be appropriate.
Agreed.
Okay. So do you want to just, you can send them out to the towns tomorrow, next day, something like that? Is that okay? All right. Are we generally okay with that, having Sarah send the updated assessment numbers out to the towns? Okay.
copying us?
Yes, copying us, please.
Yep.
All right, so,
In lieu of the fact we don't have the assistance of the accounting, which I think I would fully have supported if I was here, that she had some assistance getting these numbers ready. So, thank you, Sarah.
so with that said, I think we need a motion for the budget and the language as stipulated on this slide.
I move that the Silver Lake Regional School Committee approve $40,644,440 as the fiscal 2026 educational budget, the operating budget, and further that the total appropriation of $40,564,440, yes?
I missed, that second number should be the same as the first one.
Okay.
Sorry.
And further, that the total appropriation of $40,644,440 is in compliance with the Education Reform Act of 1993 and recommended by the superintendent of schools. And further, that the school committee directs the superintendents to allocate the following additional funding sources, which total $3,533,000. FY26 anticipated circuit breaker special education reimbursement of $2.5 million, and anticipated FY26 grant revolving account funding totaling $1,033,000. The final approved expenditures for the school will be $44,177,440.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, is this a roll call vote?
It should be at least 2/3 for approval, just to make sure.
Yeah, okay. So Jean,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Lucas, Jen,
Yes.
Paula,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Amy.
Yes,
I'm a yes.
I come to.
All right, and I think with,
We also need to vote to use the E&D.
we already did.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The number?
Unanimous.
Yep,
Okay.
1.25.
yep, that was previously voted. So I think with that, then Sarah will send out the actual assessments in the next day or two. And I think we're in a position to adjourn. So can I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Jean,
Yes.
Jason, Michael, Lucas, Jen, Paula,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
I'm a yes.